Hi, welcome to lecture number 2 for our part 3 in our Path to War. So we're going to be talking about the Pacific, and we're going to be looking at some sources and arguing different sources and about actual events that happened. So our essential questions are going to be looking at are horrible things or atrocities committed during war unavoidable? Okay, and then also we're going to be looking at how individual countries could have bias, shape how we see events, or even how we remember them. And so this is actually a very good link to something called the misinformation effect that like the internet also actually perpetuates as well. So let's go ahead and think about those two questions as we view our sources about Nanjing. All right, so Japan, 1930s. We're just going to talk about what happened in the past. In Japan, 1930s, Japan was suffering from economic problems. They were generally a very small country, and so if you look at geographically compared to Asia, it isn't very huge. I mean, even Thailand is probably close to the very similar size of Japan. And so Japan wanted to expand its empire. It wanted to gain more raw materials, and at that time, Japan was heavily industrializing, and it was definitely going to be in need of more fuel, gas, coal, you name it, metal and iron. Okay, and so in this way, it could actually be seen as a world power. And so, in order for them to be seen as a world power, they also needed to restore power in Asia and throughout the world, so that it could be known as a actual, probably a power that to be reckoned with in the world stage. And so those were the aims during that time. And so one of the first ideas that Japan was thinking was to invade China because it was one of the closest neighbors. It actually had abundant resources that they weren't really using, and there was also a lot of reasons for them to kind of just assert its dominance over the Chinese culture. And so Japan invaded China's northern region, and this was actually a place called Manchuria in 1931. It was already being heavily bought out and industrialized by the Japanese. And this area was also very rich with iron and coal. So, of course, they kind of stepped in and took it as a base to kind of invade the rest of Asia. And so during that time, there was the capital city of Nanjing, located in more of the central China, south from kind of in the south away from Manchuria. And Japan decided to invade that in December 1936, hoping that this would cause the Chinese to surrender and relinquish its territories to Japan, which it didn't. All right, so we're going to be looking at historical skills, and we're going to be corroborating, we're going to be analyzing, we're going to be using different ways to think about how sources are related. And looking at these sources, you have to kind of think about which sources is from which country. Okay, so first we're going to be talking about what happened during the invasion of Nanjing. Secondly, was it just an invasion or was it a massacre? Was it a complete just ruination of the Chinese people? Was it an act of atrocity, meaning that it was so horrible and so just completely demented that we can't even mention it, like some of the acts that were performed during this time, right? And so we're going to be looking at comparing accounts. So you're going to be reading two different accounts of the invasion of Nanjing from the textbooks, one from China and one from Japan. We're probably going to also do this in class, so if you want to wait till then, you can stop the video now and we can continue it later, or if you want to just do this on your own, continue watching this video and complete the rest of these activities. And so think about what you want to do from this point on, but we're going to be looking at two different sources, and the sources are one from China and one from Japan. As you read the source, write lists of what happened according to each source, considering the following. What happened during the invasion of Nanjing? And don't go Googling this because you won't like what you find. But go ahead and think about what happened during the invasion of Nanjing based on only those two accounts that we're going to give you in the next slide. Based on your historical skills, determine the perspective and also the reliability of the sources. And so perspective meaning who wrote it. Reliability is this, can we trust it, right? And then afterwards, you're also going to be reading a third account, a third source, and corroborate how it actually compares with the first two. All right, here we go. So here are the two sources. The first one, textbook A excerpt. Go ahead and read that to yourself. And this picture is corresponding with textbook A, this picture of the prisoner and the two Japanese soldiers. And textbook B, okay, is going to correspond with this picture of, you see what happened in the aftermath of supposedly I guess, a battle. And you see this rubble, and in the center is actually a crying child. And so this is going to go with textbook B excerpt. All right, guys, just pause the video for now and continue reading. Analyze for a little bit and think about which source is which. All right, guys, so in this question, you're going to be looking at matching the correct source with the correct excerpt. So think about these different, I guess, credentials for our sources, and think if this is actually excerpt A or excerpt B. And going to answer that now. I don't know if you're going to need to pause this, but maybe you should, just so that you could take a good look and answer this question correctly. All right, so the next question is looking still at the slide 29, and that's actually going to be about excerpt A and excerpt B. What do you look at on slide 29 to determine which document was from which country? So explain two questions. The first one being, how do you know this is from which country? And then for number two, which of these textbooks, if either, do you find more trustworthy and reliable? Why? And so think about like both of these sources that you just identified. Which one do you think is more reliable? Which one do you think is more trustworthy? Okay, and trustworthy meaning that how do you know this is not a bias in some way towards making this look more exaggerated or more unrealistic in our documents? Go ahead and pause for now. You're definitely going to need at least 5 to 10 minutes on this, and make sure you are clear in how you're presenting the evidence. If you need to kind of look at the slides on slide 29, use the slide in our Nearpod activity. And this way, you won't actually have to go back and forth on Nearpod. You could just look on the slide from the Google slide, also placed in the assignment for you. Okay, next we're going to be corroborating accounts. And when we corroborate, we're going to see if what is said in the sources is supported by another source. So as you read the third source, write a list of what happened according to the source, considering the following prompt. What happened during the invasion of Nanjing? And then compare and contrast Spence's primary source, that's document C, with both perspectives, version of the textbook excerpt A and B. Use evidence in your list and make sure you have a mixture of points. Each list should have at least one comparison. Okay, what matches and at least one contrast. What about their stories? Do or do not align? So you're going to be looking at what is similar in document A and similar in document B, and then you're going to compare that with document C. So do we see actually what we need to see in document C that is similar or is present in both A and B? And then you're also going to look at contrast. What is missing from document C that is actually mentioned in document A or B? So those are kind of the ways that we're going to be comparing or corroborating the account. So document C, is it reliable? And how do we know it's reliable? Well, we're going to compare it with what information we already have, which is actually excerpt A and B. Do not use online sources. Don't use Google, like any kind of Google. Don't go to another website. Just use these documents because they are already from very legitimate sources. And we know that these are actually from people that actually study history and wrote this down. So only compare document C with excerpt A and B, please. All right, here's document C. I suggest you guys pause for a few minutes and read it carefully. And if you have an opportunity, maybe you can see if you could highlight on the slide that was given that also has these sources. All right, so list 2 of the 3 ways that Spence account compares or contrasts with a Japanese textbook. Number your points. So list 2 to 3 ways that compares or contrasts, meaning compare meaning similar, contrast meaning different, and that is going to be talking about the textbook from Japan, the country of Japan, and then number your points. Go ahead and pause, and so that you could actually accurately write these accounts in and compare accurately. Okay, so for document C, go ahead and look at document C again, and then compare that to document, uh, I guess the Chinese document, which will probably document C, B. Think about what are similar and what's also different, and then also number your points. Go ahead and pause the video again, and put your evidence of what is similar and also what is different. Lastly, in your opinion, what really happened during the invasion of Nanjing? Was it A or was it B? Think about what is actually being said. Was there an over exaggeration, or was there actually a brutal massacre, but it wasn't? Uh, it was actually in a way something that couldn't have been avoided. All right, what do you most agree with the Japanese or Chinese story that you chose in the last slide about what happened in Nanjing? So think about what you witnessed. Which one do you think is definitely more trustworthy to you? What do you think is truly the exact events of what occurred? And how do you know this? So what do you want? Which one do you agree with more, Japan or China? And think about which story do you think should be actually placed here, according to what we actually already know. Go ahead and pause and give a very complete and very well supported reasoning. And guys, thank you for your time. We could actually stop here, as this is the end of the Nearpod, but make sure that you try to complete this as completely as you can. Thank you for your time, guys, and we will see you in class.